The link between Satanism and drugs. Drugs and Satanism have been uniquely joined for centuries. Archaeologists note that pre-Columbian cultures forged a link between sadism, terrorism, and human sacrifice by taking drugs. The Mesoamerican folk religions of the Mayas and Aztecs required human sacrifices and used drugs to induce apathy in the victims. The writings of the late Carlos Castaneda, whose books give glowing tales of pharmacological indulgence through the sorcerer Don Juan, provide a societal backdrop for drugs and the occult. Castaneda, author of Journey to Ixtlan, The Power of Silence, and The Fire Within, idealized black magic practices of human-animal communication and spellcasting. He pointed out that all such occult procedures are possible under the influence of hallucinogenic drugs such as psilocybin and peyote. Many read his books and imitate Castaneda's fusion of the occult and narcotics. For many participants in satanic ceremonies, the lure of drugs is an enticement attracting them to Satanism. Once involved in the cult, the use of drugs, along with hypnotic suggestion, becomes a form of brainwashing. Satanic cult leaders know that even though their philosophy is based on moral anarchy, they must maintain cohesiveness with their followers. Drugs render the devil's devotees addictively dependent and less likely to abandon their allegiance to Satan. Mind-altering substances, combined with the charismatic control of an influential cult leader, trap Satanists, leaving them no way out. Ironically, the cult leader seldom uses drugs. To do so would put him at risk of losing control over members who are under the influence of drugs. By staying sober, he can better manipulate the group. The lure of Satanism is selfishness, the same gratifying impulse that causes many to turn to drugs. Thus, an unholy bond exists between drugs and the devil, narcotics being both a form of seduction and a means of continued entrapment. Some Satanists avoid drugs after commitment to devil worship. To them, swearing allegiance to Satan is a more effective high than psychoactive substances. The result is what one social expert calls a delusional habit of the mind. Superscript 3. As with the Brownsville case, some clandestine devil worshippers become involved in drug trafficking. New inductees may serve as mules, carriers who transport the drugs across borders and state lines. The illicit distribution of drugs generates an underground cash economy, enabling cult members to spend their time pursuing satanic activities. A detective's view of drugs and the devil. Detective Lieutenant Larry Jones, a police veteran and director of the Cult Crime Impact Network, strongly believes that drugs and Satanism are inseparable. During an interview, he described to me why that link is so important. People with an inner pain often turn to drugs. But it doesn't work. It creates a bondage to the supplier, Lieutenant Jones explained. If you have a satanic group supplying the drugs for you, it's easier to go to their meetings than steal the dope. Also, a certain amount of deadening of the sensibilities is necessary in order to get new cult members to go through what they have to endure. Detective Jones talked about the use of drugs as a means of coping in cults. Drinking blood is distasteful to any normal person, yet that's what is required to join some satanic cults. Drugs make it possible to do the unthinkable. Also, many new members have to cut or torture themselves to prove their devotion to the devil. Drugs help them withstand the pain. Once they become an active member of the cult, drugs become even more necessary to heighten the mystique of some ceremonies, Jones declared. The more you do drugs, the less you are able to think clearly. Then you become less aware of what is being done to entice you into satanic activity. Drugs and evil. Eugene Frank Thompson, age 20, was a small-time burglar and a big-time cocaine addict. On March 23, 1989, Thompson injected cocaine 20 to 30 times during a 4-hour period. Then, he armed himself with a semi-automatic machine pistol and went on a murderous rampage. A few hours later he ended his own life after killing 2 women, raping another, and wounding 2 police officers. Unquestionably, drugs pushed him over the edge of insanity into ultimate evil. The evil of drugs often strikes the most innocent. According to the National Committee for Prevention of Child Abuse, more than 1,200 children in the United States died at the hands of child abusers, many of them drug addicts. Of 32 states providing information about problems linked to child abuse, 22 cited substance abuse as the dominant characteristic among their caseload. In the District of Columbia, almost 90% of reported child abusers are active substance abusers. The case of Douglas Allendale was particularly pathetic. Police found the 18-month-old boy screaming after eating 4 cubes of crack cocaine. The child's mother testified that the morning after a party in her apartment, young Douglas wandered into a bedroom where her boyfriend was sleeping with cocaine nearby. The child began hallucinating after stuffing the cocaine into his mouth. Drug-dealing murders in Matamoros. The sobering reality of the connection between drugs and Satanism was dramatically driven home a decade ago when 15 bodies were unearthed in Mexico, across the border from Brownsville, Texas. A Matamoros, Mexico, drug ring had kidnapped and murdered innocent victims as sacrifices to Satan. The drug dealers hoped that in exchange the devil would grant them protection from the police and immunity from any bullets fired their way. Police described the crime scene as a human slaughterhouse. They discovered a cauldron containing blood and bones from the bodies. The heads of some victims had been cut open and the brains removed, to be mixed in the bloody cauldron. Before the bodies were buried, wires were attached to the spines, so that they could be pulled out later and made into necklaces. The case cracked open when they abducted and sacrificed Mark Kilroy, a 21-year-old student at the University of Texas Austin. Kilroy was in Matamoros, partying during spring break and was last seen drinking with friends. His parents searched for weeks, distributing more than 20,000 handbills and offering a $15,000 reward for information. When the truth of his murder was finally known, Mrs. Kilroy concluded, "I think the suspects must be possessed by the devil." That would be the only explanation for such bizarre actions. Superscript 1 James Kilroy said his son's death should show that even casual drug use can lead to deadly consequences. "Marijuana is what killed Mark," Superscript 2 he told the press. The chief deputy's view of the Matamoros murders. This story broke nationally. On my radio program I interviewed Carlos Tapia, chief deputy of Cameron County, Texas, where Brownsville is located. "Larson, what startled you the most when you saw the crime scene?" Tapia: "I thought in my 22 years of law enforcement, I had seen everything. I hadn't. As we drew near, you could smell the stench, blood and decomposing organs. In a big, cast-iron pot there were pieces of human bodies, and a goat's head with horns." Larson: "What went through your mind?" Tapia: "When we saw the bodies, the suspects were laughing and making jokes. They had a very nonchalant attitude." Larson: "Didn't they understand the gravity of what they had done?" Tapia: "In their wicked, distorted minds there was no seriousness. They thought they had performed some kind of heroic deed for the devil." If you like this video, please help me by hitting the like button, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell, so you will not miss any new videos like this. They believed that by sacrificing innocent human beings, their loads of marijuana would have an invisible shield of protection from law enforcement officers. They were moving an average of 1,000 pounds a week across the border. Larson: "You must be incensed at what happened." Tapia: "I was angry when I heard what they did to a private investigator working for the father of the American boy they murdered. They cut the skin off the bottoms of both his feet and made him walk on salt. Then they put him in a tub of water and boiled him alive. While he was screaming, they pulled pieces of raw flesh off his body." Larson: "Any advice for our audience?" Tapia: "Don't get caught unawares, like we did. If you see any signs of something that's out of the ordinary, notify your law enforcement officers. Do yourself a favor. Save your kids." Confronting the drug dilemma. Though the drug problem in America is tragic, the majority of people do not have serious problems with illegal substances. In fact, the most dangerous and widely used drug is alcohol. Advertisements depict beautiful women and athletic men drinking booze and seeming to get the most out of life. The result is a desensitization to abusive substances. Apart from such glamorization, most people, especially teenagers, use drugs for other reasons. A published survey revealed that 50% of teenagers said they used drugs to experiment. 23% said peer pressure was the main factor influencing them. 15% cited escapism. 10% blamed rebellion. 4% said they turned on simply because drugs were readily available. If you're concerned that someone you love is on drugs, here are the main ones to look for. Marijuana, made from the dried leaves of the cannabis sativa plant. Smoked as a cigarette, joint. Tetrahydrocannabinol, the psychoactive ingredient. A gateway drug, introducing teens to other abusive substances. Impairs short-term memory and psychomotor functions. Contains cancer-causing agents. Psychologically addictive. Cocaine/crack, highly addictive and potentially lethal. Snorted, smoked, or injected. Stimulant. Affects blood pressure and respiratory system. When used as crack, it causes hallucinations and seizures. LSD, popular hallucinogen during the 1960s, enjoying a resurgence among today's teens. Purchased in dot form, blotted on a piece of paper, and swallowed. Causes panic, paranoia, flashbacks, and sleeplessness. PCP, angel dust hallucinogen that may cause violent behavior. Most often smoked, but also inhaled, injected, or eaten. Causes irrational behavior. Blocks pain receptors, sometimes resulting in self-inflicted injuries. Also known as love boat or graveyard. Uppers, stimulants such as speed, tablet, pill, or capsule, and crank, white powder and tablets. Sometimes in crystal form, such as crystal meth. Go by such names as black beauties, footballs, pep pills, bumblebees. Produces anxiety, sleeplessness, and blurred vision. Can cause heart failure. Downers, capsules and tablets producing relaxation but also slurred speech and altered perception in large doses. Depression and comas may result. Both physical and psychological dependence. Go by such names as blue devils, red devils, and yellow jackets. Designer drugs, concocted by underground chemists using unique molecular structure to avoid illegality. May be stronger than the drugs they imitate. Include synthetic heroin, ecstasy, China white, and analogs of PCP. Sold as white powder or tablet. Can cause uncontrollable tremors and brain damage. Some advice for parents. Here are some ways to take constructive action to get a teenager off drugs before such abuse leads to demonic subjection. Deal directly with the problem. The worst mistake is for parents to experience denial and presume the problem is a passing fad. But don't overreact. Calling the police at the first sign of drug paraphernalia or telling your child he has ruined the family's reputation could destroy any later attempt at reconciliation. Be prepared for your child's vigorous denial. Get some facts from local drug treatment centers to help present your case. Drugs distort moral judgment. Your child's defense may seem preposterous, though it seems logical to him. Be patient. Explain your concerns. Your child may be more addicted than he realizes, and his response could be a distorted interpretation of his physical dependency. You may encounter irrationality and anger. Persist calmly to make your point. Search your own heart to find your part of the problem. Has love been missing from your home? Is communication an obstacle? Does your child feel neglected? Has an emphasis on social status and materialism bred disrespect for moral convention? Have you blundered by providing inadequate supervision of your child's spare time? Has your family ignored spiritual values and the importance of regular attendance at church or synagogue? When the time comes to broach the subject, begin by reaffirming your love. Assure your child that you want to be part of the solution. Ask him to point out your failures from his perspective. Inquire if he comprehends the real reason drugs seem attractive. Explain that you will not tolerate continued use of illegal and self-destructive drugs. Confirm your willingness to find the proper kind of therapeutic treatment to overcome the dependency. Be ready for one of several arguments: the drugs aren't mine, they belong to someone else. I'm not hooked because I only use them occasionally. It's no different from the booze you drink or the pills you take. I only go along with it to be popular. Drug abuse is a symptom, not a cause. Idle time is the devil's playground. Organize family activities to keep your child busy. Get him involved in community efforts to help the needy. Talk with your church about youth activities that combine spiritual and recreational interests. If necessary, insist that your child break off relationships with friends who use drugs. Go with him to concerts instead of dropping him off to see a rock band where drug use will be rampant. Talk with his teachers about special efforts to improve his poor schoolwork. If your child is uncooperative, professional intervention or an austere rehabilitation program may be necessary. The situation may be too far advanced for parental intercession and require medical treatment and controlled supervision. Remember, drugs can be an introduction to the occult, the doorway to the devil and death. Firm discipline, loving acceptance, and constant vigilance can prevent your child from getting hooked on Satan's opiate.